Hi, folks, and welcome to the Randy Karraker Show on STL Sports Central. It's Tuesday, so B-Schaeff is in. We're going to talk some ball throughout the course of the next hour and a half or so. We're brought to you by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. And we're excited because the Cardinals are better than the Dodgers.
Well, they were last night.
Yeah,
it was a great
great
game.
For me lately.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, they clawed their way back to 500, which doesn't sound as exciting as the game itself was.
57 baby.
That was a great game. That was a lot of fun last night. Well-pitched game by both sides. You get into the bullpens, you have a little action, some home runs here and there, and some excitement in the end, and the Cardinals win. I mean, people were fired up last night on our post-game show on STL Sports Central, but it is one of those things that you have to you wake up today and go, oh, yeah, we're 500 team. But, hey, that was fun.
Well, and a couple of things. Number one, I kind of expected that after his sweaty performance last week, that Sonny Gray in L.A. would have a good performance.
Yeah.
I didn't expect 7 innings of one-hit ball. He was terrific. I also never expect Tyler Glasnow to go 7 innings, and he allowed 1 run on 3 hits. It was an old-school pitching pairing. It was really fun to have 2 good pitchers both pitching really well, and I don't know how you feel about that. I'm not an 8-6 game kind of. I'm more of a 3-2 kind of game rather than an 8-6 kind of game. I love seeing a great pitching pairing. I think that's one of the things that baseball has lost, and I love it when you have a pairing that you want to go see, and then the guys wind up pitching well.
Yeah, that was fun, and yeah, the 2 names on paper, Glasnow, Sonny Gray. You would think that would be something akin to what you saw last night, but both guys were at the upper echelon of their stuff. Sonny, I mean, we obviously have the complete game 1 hitter that he threw in Cleveland, but that's a tougher lineup that he faced last night. So certainly one of, if not the best stuff that he had of the season, and he was really sharp.
I'll tell you what I like about that, in addition to Sonny Gray. I love the fact that the Cardinals had a couple of 23-year-olds hitting home runs in Wynn and Herrera. And I like the fact that Joel Pozo is, for me, for my money, the best pinch hitter in the National League. Only one pinch hitter in baseball has more hits than him, and that's Brandon Marsh. Pozo is 6 of 12 with 7 RBIs. Brandon Marsh is 7 of 13, but Pozo has 7 RBIs as a pinch hitter, which is far and away the best in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and it seems like at times there's maybe a hesitance of, do we go to the pinch hitter? Do we want to take Pages out of the game? I think at this point, when you have, and obviously last night was a spot where you definitely do it, but when you have that weapon, it does seemingly make sense to use it, and it doesn't necessarily indicate, he should be in the starting lineup more. He's been great as a pinch hitter specifically. I don't know if that's something that you can necessarily count on staying sticky as a stat for a long time, but when you think about, I think back to when he had the walk-off at Busch and he did the on-field interview with the Cat, and the Cat said, "What was your approach?" And he said, "No approach, you know me." And I think that sort of speaks to maybe why he might be so good as a pinch hitter, because you just got to go up there and you got to fight it off, put the ball in play, and try to find a way to help your team, and he does that.
Yeah, don't think, and maybe he is one of those guys. I mean, when you look at history, the Lenny Harrises of the world, the Steve Brauns, the Gerald Perrys, Milt Thompson guys that were here, they had reached the point in their career where they could just go up and react. And he appears to be one of those guys who just goes up and reacts, like you say, no approach. And the hardest thing to do in baseball is to get a pinch hit. You come in, especially now in this day and age where you have been sitting the whole game and you're facing 100 miles an hour. It's a hard thing to do. So for the Cardinals to find a guy that's a professional pinch hitter is a real value to them.
Yeah, and I'll be curious kind of long term. Like we're just thinking in the here and now, and Pozo's a great fit for this current year's team, but you've also got all those catchers coming. It'd be interesting to see if he sticks around and kind of if he can parlay this into something more and in a longer stint with the Cardinals. But certainly with the bat, you appreciate what he's bringing to the table right now.
Yeah, and what's interesting is when you look at the guys that are the top pinch hitters in baseball now, and it's nowhere close to the way it used to be because we have the DH. You don't need to pinch hit for the pitcher anymore. But Brandon Marsh, veteran guy, has 7. Adam Frazier's been around the block. He has 6. Justin Turner has 6 pinch hits. He's been around forever. Grichuk has 5 pinch hits. He's been around for a really long time. Jose Iglesias. It's all a bunch of veteran guys, basically, aside from Pozo and Andy Ibanez with Detroit. Otherwise, like the top 10 pinch hitters, it's Ahmed Rosario, it's Lamont Wade, it's people that have been around. So for Pozo to be doing this at this stage of his career is pretty impressive, especially when you look at the rest of the Cardinal pinch hitters who are not that great.
Yeah, and it's like you said, not really a commonality in the game anymore, but it's something that he has clearly adapted to. And we talk about this all the time. If you could stock your bench with some guys that could do things like that, it would make for, better situational hitting, better possibilities late in games. And the Cardinals seem to have one guy that's doing it in sort of what's been a lost art across the game. Good for him. I mean, he's not a young guy. He's 28 years old, but has had kind of a winding path to get some consistent big league opportunity. And I mean, when you do things like he did last night, you figure that you're going to keep having those chances.
Here are the Cardinals' 15 pinch hits this year. Pozo was 6.
Yeah.
Lukenbaker not here anymore.
No.
He had 3. Burleson a starter now, 2. Arenado hurt, not on the roster, on the active roster, 1. Jose Fermin in the minors, not on the active roster, 1. So JC 1 and Walker 1. That's it.
It's kind of crazy that you mentioned Lukenbaker. I was on the air on my show in Columbia yesterday talking about the 40-man roster and how there's going to be some changes. And my co-host looks and he goes, Brenden, I don't know what's going on, but Lukenbaker's not listed on the Cardinals 40-man. Like, I don't know what's going on. I look at my phone and it's, oh, okay, he's on the Dodgers now. So that was kind of an interesting piece of news yesterday that I don't know that we expected. Like, understand they wanted to get the left-hander. I don't even remember the gentleman's name.
Italian guy.
The Italian guy from the Marlins, starts with a V. And they've got him in AAA because John King's hurt. You traded away Steven Matz. So they wanted to get a lefty, which makes a ton of sense. But they didn't actually need to get rid of Lukenbaker to do that because they don't have a full 40-man roster. But they do it anyway, and it's kind of an interesting little piece of news from yesterday.
And they're really, once you got Blaze Jordan, there wasn't a spot for Lukenbaker at all anyway, right? A first baseman, they've got a lot of first baseman DH types. And basically, when they traded Matz for Jordan, that kind of closed any possibility for Lukenbaker to be a Cardinal anymore.
Yeah, and so how that comes to be, if it's, Lukenbaker's side going, hey, maybe an opportunity here to go, somewhere if anybody wants me. You could see him being a guy that could end up in Korea next year, just hitting a bunch of bombs. And so he was clearly not coming up for the Cardinals this year. Who orchestrated or who kind of led the way on that? Noticing Blaze Jordan, and then if you're sitting there being Lukenbaker, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, hey, maybe we try something here and let everybody kind of go their separate ways. Hope the best for Lukenbaker. Interesting that the Dodgers picked him up. They don't really have a spot for him either, but they're a team that, you're one Freddie Freeman injury away from going, well, we're supposed to win the World Series this year. We got to have some depth down there.
They're the new Devil Magic team, aren't they? They just turn guys into players it's been happening for a while with Chris Taylor and Max Muncy and Kike Hernandez and with Tommy Edman being the NLCS MVP.
Yeah.
I mean, they're always coming up with guys that aren't supposed to perform at a high level and do. And I wouldn't be surprised if they got something out of Lukenbaker. I would.
It would be awesome if they did.
Yeah.
I mean, how great would that be?
I don't think that he's 28. He won't be a star player, but I wouldn't be surprised if he wound up doing some good things for the Dodgers because they just have a way of getting guys to perform.
Like, they're one injury away from him being on a postseason roster and having a late pinch hit at bat against a lefty reliever and hitting a bomb in the NLCS or something. It would be, and again, when that happens, it's not really the Cardinals' fault. Like, at this point, just letting him go for nothing. I saw some people say, well, how could we not trade him and get something for him? When he passes through waivers and the Dodgers are the team that ends up getting him, tells you that everybody else said, no, we're okay. We don't want him for free. So no, he didn't have trade value, but it is sort of this idea that Cardinals fans have where it's like, well, you kind of let him rot for so long. Did he ever really get a real chance? We'll do this perpetually with guys. It would just be very funny and chaotic if he did something good for the Dodgers.
Okay. Katie Wu had a piece this morning in The Athletic, and she points out the people that are going to have spots. And Donovan's got a spot. Wynn's got a spot. Burleson's got a spot. Obviously, Contreras is going to have a spot. For the moment, Pages is going to have a spot. And then, and Victor Scott, the second, is still going to be your center fielder. But then they have to figure out with Nootbaar and Burleson's going to be there. So it's going to be Nootbaar, Jordan, Sajaci, Gorman. Ollie's going to have to figure out how to get enough at-bats for all of those guys to give the Cardinals an idea of what they're capable of in the last 2 months. I kind of think that some of these guys have already shown the Cardinals what they are, but I do think that it can be advantageous for them. Number one, to find out whether or not we've gone from Gorman being able to hit for power, which we know he can, to Gorman being able to stay healthy. Now it's to Gorman being able to play third. I think there's just too many ifs with Nolan Gorman at this stage.
Yeah, there's a lot of ifs. There's a lot of ifs, and it's interesting that the playing time is not maybe a little bit more of a certainty for him, just to kind of flush out as many of the ifs as you can over August and September. And I actually think that's a mistake. I would have Gorman at third base every day that he's healthy enough to do it. Yeah. I don't understand why Sajayce's being plugged in there to the effect that he is. It's not that I don't think he can be a fine player down the road, but like, you don't need to spend this year going, what's Thomas Sajayce? He's team controlled for so long. He can be a utility guy off your bench. Let's spend some time saying, is it or isn't it with Nolan Gorman, right, so that Chaim Bloom knows what to do in November.
I didn't mention Herrera, by the way. He's
going to be in there impartially in left.
Either left or DH.
That's he'll be there. Like, so I guess theoretically you could go Sajayce at third, Gorman could DH for a day if Herrera's in left. Otherwise, Herrera's largely going to be your designated hitter, which is going to squeeze Gorman if Sajayce really has to play some third for whatever reason. And then you look at left field, right field. Newpart's going to play a decent amount. Like I don't even think that's a problem. You kind of want to find out with him as well. Mm-hmm. I know he hasn't been durable, but if he's durable from now to the end of the season, does that either build his trade value enough to where you want to move him in November, or does it reinforce that you want him on next year's team? Like, he's another guy that I think the upside is there to where they want to use him, but Walker getting squeezed that's tricky.
Okay, so you used a term there. I was going to use another word, but upside. Is Thomas Sajayce ever going to be an important guy an important everyday guy for a winning team? I like Thomas Sajayce.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's talk about the tools. Hit for power, run, field, throw. We know he can hit a little bit. We don't know how much. Not going to hit for a ton of power. Doesn't run particularly well.
No.
Doesn't have a great arm. And sometimes he can pick it. I don't think he's anywhere close to a 5-tool player. I think he can be a nice bench guy, but I don't really, from what I've seen of Thomas Sajayce, I don't envision him being an everyday player for a pennant-winning team.
No, and they sort of protected him earlier in the season as though he could become that. Like, no, he's a prospect that needs to play every day in AAA, which I identified with and agreed with. Yeah. Right now, in a season that I know they're at 500, I know they're 5.5 out of the wild card or whatever it is.
5.5, yeah.
But right now, it's a season where, like, they're probably not going anywhere. He'd be the perfect type of guy to plug in at third base for 2 straight months and see what he is. If you didn't have 3 players ahead of him that you neglected to move on from, trade, find a home for between, the month of July and now. And so they really don't have room to prioritize, in my opinion, Thomas Sajayce, where Gorman's still on the roster. And you made a comment that I think is partially right, where you said the Cardinals maybe already kind of know who these guys are. We're saying, hey, got to find out. And they're saying, all right, we're going to play the guys that we're going to play because we kind of already know. I think the manager, Oliver Marmol, has his guys that he believes are have it and don't. And like, that's reflected in the play. I wonder if up top, and like, then you have to wonder, what does up top even mean? Are you talking about Mo? You're talking about Chaim? Like, do they have synergy on the way Ollie is making out the lineups? And does anybody care enough for that to even matter right now? It's like, whatever. He let Ollie do what he's doing. He's going to have to impress a new group of executives that's coming in to retain his role. I believe he's a good manager and should keep the job. People are going to disagree with that. But legitimately, if he's in his role, he's going to have to continue to do the things that he thinks can squeeze 85 wins out of this roster, because that would be an impressive thing, I think, when everybody recognizes that the roster is not quite up to par with some of the other teams contending for playoff spots right now.
Okay, I want to get folks to chat here, and I think this will be probably something that you'll want to weigh in on. I agree with you. And if you have specific instances where you think Ollie Marmol has done a bad job of managing this year, I'd like to see them, because I think overall,
I really would like to see them too. Yeah, like, we're not just saying that. Like, actually, if you throw something out there.
Because I think he's done a good job of managing too. I think he's handled the bullpen well. I think in this situation where he's trying to get at bats for people, and the objective has not been necessarily to win this year, but I think he's done a fine job of walking the line between giving everybody opportunities and trying to win games. I think he's done a really good job, a pretty darn good job of that. But here's the thing. I think that the get rid of, fire Ollie Marmol crowd, it's probably as much guilt by association as anything else because he was hired by Mo and he's Mo's guy. And Mo said, I think he can be a managerial star. But if you are somebody, and totally get it, if you don't want Oli Marmol to be back, I want to know if it's based on performance or if it's based on just the way you feel about him in general. I wonder why people want him fired so badly.
Yeah, and like you can pick out little things that you say, I don't agree that Jordan Walker's not getting playing time. And I would look at you and say, I agree. Like Jordan Walker, again, what else should this be about other than going, all right, if we weren't going to trade him, if he was going to come off the injured list after the All-Star break and have, since then he's got a 283 average, a 345 on base, doesn't hit for a ton of power still, but 741 is the OPS. It's perfectly suitable. And that's way more than you were getting from him previously. And then, we have a couple of days in a row where he's off. I don't know if there's an injury. Like there are definitely times where that happens that 3 days later we go, oh, he's been dealing with something. And so that can explain it. But the fact that the big Katie Wu article comes out about who's going to play when tells me there's probably not an injury. And that's the reason that it's a topic of conversation, because she asked and he would say he's banged up if it, because that would absolve him of this conundrum. But I agree that Jordan Walker should be playing. Oli Marmol has not been put in a position by the front office that can happen on an everyday basis. And Newpark can play every day, and Burleson can play every day, and Herrera can play every day. It's not possible until one of them gets hurt. It cannot be done. So while I agree that I would like to see him squeeze in Walker more than he has at least the last couple of days, I also see the other side of it and say it's not necessarily an easy task that they have put him to accomplish all of these things at once. The only spot that I disagree with is I just don't think Sajasi has to start. Yeah, it's okay if he rides the bench and you figure out more about Gorman, provided Gorman's back is 100% and he can handle the workload of an everyday third base gig.
Eric Cleveland, Heim is going to want his own guy, I think. We'll know early on because Oli Marmol is either going to get fired or he's going to get an extension. They are not, especially under a first-year president of baseball operations, they're not going to have a lame duck manager in 2026. It's going to be one or the other. He's either going to get extended or he's going to get let go.
To that point, though, what would be the reasons you can't? Not because I just want to play devil's advocate for a moment and articulate why it would be impossible that they could do that rather than, all right, you got this contract. I'm a new guy. I'm getting my bearings. We're going to see what we think of you for one more year in a year where we're not really spending in free agency anyway. So it's not necessarily about attracting free agents, right? Like that part of it to me is like, you maybe could get away with it, but you're right that we rarely ever see it. So I'm curious what would be like the biggest reason in your mind why they couldn't fathom doing something like that.
You know what? Because I think it's because of human nature and the way players act. And sometimes there are players out there, there are a lot of self-starters, but there are also a lot of players that say, well, he's not going to be my manager next year anyway.
I'm here longer than he is. Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. And I just think it's a baseball thing. Well, this is the way we've always done it.
Sure.
But I do think that managers hate being in that situation. I think it's uncomfortable for everybody in the situation. And from a public relations standpoint, you have a stretch where you lose 8 out of 10 early in the season, and then everybody's calling for the head of the manager. It's only his last year anyway. He's not going to be here next year anyway. I just think there's a lot of negatives that come along with a manager heading into his last year.
And you're right. It is the way it's always been. Heck, in college football, you got to have 4 years on your contract or you're light in that department. So I definitely agree with you. It's just as crazy to think about because Cardinals fans would say, well, he didn't deserve the first extension based on merit. And they gave it to him when they gave it to him. And then I think since that extension, he has performed better. The team has performed better, but not to the level that people would say is meritorious of another extension. And so that will be very, very much a curiosity, which is why, like, to his credit, I do think he sort of just has to go. People from upstairs could tell him this, that, or the other, but he's got to manage his team. Yeah. He's got to manage his team and say, like, I'm equipped to do this. And I'm going to show that over the next couple of months. If this is even remotely a conversation, I'm going to put my best foot forward and show what I'm about.
There you see, it's not, Jay says it's not good or bad with Oli anymore. He's simply not a difference maker. Don't hate the guy, but it's time to move on. And see, I think that not every player has gotten better. But there are players that have gotten better and players that have got, like Liberatore with runway has gotten better. McGreevy has been given an opportunity. He's gotten better. Herrera has gotten better. Now that you see a full year of Burleson, he's gotten better, and he is what he is. He's not a superstar. And actually, when Gorm, and if there was a mistake, and I don't know if this was a Marmol mistake or a front office mistake in not giving enough runway to Gorman in the first month and a half of the season, but they didn't think that he was ready for the runway. But once he got going, he hit pretty well. I think there's a lot of positives to be drawn, but you look at the overall numbers and the way that the unit has been built. And again, I don't know if that's an Ollie issue or a front office issue, but the unit is not scoring enough runs on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and you mentioned the comment was not a difference maker, and I've been thinking about that. It's interesting. Like, one, I would say, how many managers are significant difference makers? Like, obviously, the Cubs said, well, Counsell is, we're going to spend more on him than before we were even ready to spend on marquee free agents. We're going to get Craig Counsell in here because we think he can be a difference maker. And I think a really good manager can be one. But I also think, like, if we are going to cling to this notion that Mozeliak has been the problem and their pitching philosophy, all these pitch to contact guys, they're just so behind and okay, previous offseason, they're going to work in the infrastructure, start fixing those things from the minor leagues. Like, they haven't really seen the benefits of that yet. And so and it's not to say there should be an endless runway for a manager that doesn't win, but also, like, I think most Cardinals fans are on board with saying a lot of the issues have come from the way the front office has done certain things. And therefore, do we really even have an idea of what Ollie would do with a roster that, I mean, the pitching has been brutal at times for this year's team and obviously the past couple of years. So that's where I kind of go, if I maintain that if he had an upper echelon roster, he would be as good as anybody in baseball. But then again, like, couldn't I say that about a lot of managers? Well, give him the best team, he's going to have the best record. I'm debating that with myself at the moment.
So there's no doubt that Whitey Herzog was a difference maker. He was able, and being the general manager helped him a lot because he was able to tailor his team to the ballpark that he had. You couldn't hit home runs in that ballpark. He said, okay, I'm going to get a bunch of jackrabbits. I'm going to get a bunch of switch hitters. I'm going to get a bunch of guys that can go track it down defensively, that can run, and nobody else can come into my ballpark and hit home runs because it's so big. And I'm going to get a bunch of pitch to contact guys, build a great defense because nobody can hit a ball out of our ballpark. And that's how we're going to win. And he did. He was, and that's why he's in the Hall of Fame. Whitey was different. Here's how Tony is and was a difference maker. He pressured ownership or cajoled ownership to get him tons and tons of really good players, right? What made Tony La Russa great? In 2004, when this team won 105 games, half of his starting 8 was Hall of Famers. You had Walker, you had Albert, you had Yachty, you had Roland, and Edmund should be in the Hall of Fame. So we could argue that more than half of his guys, plus he had Dave Duncan, who was a different, talk about a difference maker.
Yep.
Dave Duncan was a difference maker. Joe Torre, he did better here with the talent that he had than he should have. He was always over 500. He was always in the hunt until the strike seasons. But Joe Torre didn't become a difference maker until he got Jeter and Posada and Williams and Pettit and that gang, and they started winning World Series. Now, that it's interesting because the first couple of World Series teams that Joe had in New York, they were not stellar, expensive teams. I mean, you had Chad Curtis in left, and you had Brocious, and you had Tino Martinez, you had Chuck Knobloch. It wasn't like they had gone out and signed a bunch of free agent guys until after 2000. That's when they got Clemens, and then they got A-Rod in 2004. But Joe really, I think the performance of his team, especially the 98 team, it outperformed the talent. And so he got guys to play hard for 6 months, which is really hard to do. You're right. When you say that Ollie, I know that you didn't say this, but the people on the chat line, Ollie has not done that yet. But we also have to keep in mind that Whitey had been around a long time. Whitey managed 3 division champions in Kansas City, and I think managed for 7 or 8 years before he got to St. Louis. Torre had managed the Mets and the Braves before he got to St. Louis. La Russa had managed the White Sox and the A's before he got to St. Louis. And even now, in this age where general managers are managing, most guys that win the World Series are on their 2nd or 3rd job.
Yeah, and so, like, that's crazy to think about because I don't know that, like, I think the way the league perceives Ollie Marmol is not necessarily such that he's going to lose a job here and go right to being a manager somewhere else. I think he's good though. Like I think that would be, I think the people that know him and spend time around him and have coached with him are believe him to be sharp. And so I think in the right scenario, he would be really the guy here for a long, long time, but it's going to be a tumultuous kind of period here over the next couple of months. And then Heim comes in, and if they have a good relationship, then I think you're going to see Ollie Marmol stick around for a good long time, which I'm advocating for. Like I've not shied away from that, even as the Cardinals are sitting 500, they won 83 games last year. I just can't, there's a lot of disdain for him. I understand that from fans. But I can't square the circle with you hate the roster so much. You complain about Michaelis pitching every fifth day and Eric Fetty pitching every fifth day, and that's valid. But like then you turn around and say, well, it's the guy. It's not the guy that put him here. It's the guy that's writing their name in the lineup that day when he's got the 26 on his roster that he's got. And in fairness, Ollie Marmol has pushed back as much as you possibly can. If you didn't see the blaring neon signs about how he felt about the end of the Eric Fetty time, right. I don't know what to do for you. Like this is not, well, he's a yes man. Are you joking? Did you hear what he said? It's just, that's where it's kind of difficult for me. Frustration, totally valid. Cardinals baseball has been in this malaise for several years, but like cutting through the context and identifying where the malaise is coming from, I think is more valuable than just, I hate everything and fire everybody.
All right. Dave Rowland, thanks for the chat. I don't think Ollie has cost the Cardinals games, and not many managers could have gotten more out of this team. I also want to get to a couple of other chats here. Number one, Joe Cooper. Manager does make a difference. Look at the Reds, for example. Tito has that team going, and the Reds, to their credit, not only hired Tito Francona, but they're allowing him to manage. A lot of times managers are put in a situation where they aren't allowed to manage, but the guys, Dusty Baker coming back to Houston, Bruce Bochy coming back for Texas, those guys are allowed to actually manage the team, and it makes a difference, and they're good when they get that opportunity to actually manage a team. Then there was one other chat that I wanted to get to. We'll get. I'll let you weigh in on managers managing.
Well, and I agree with that being a noble cause and a worthy thing. I'm just looking up the all-time win leaders of managers. Mm-hmm. There's an HOF next to everybody's name in the top 14, other than Bruce Bochy, who's active, Terry Francona, who's active, and Dusty Baker, who will be in the Hall of Fame. Right? Like. Right. We're talking about Hall of Fame managers, mm-hmm. and there's been however many that there's been in the history of the sport, a decent number, but at any given time in the league, there's not half the league that's a Hall of Fame manager. So you could be a legitimately good manager, but when you're comparing it to, well, he's not Bruce Bochy, he's not Terry Francona coming into the Reds and they're winning right away. Sure, but those guys are going to be in the Hall of Fame, and they've also been given not only the opportunity to manage this year and letting, the executives letting those guys do their thing, they've also had, 24, 25 years doing this to be able to turn into the guys that they are right now. I think that's almost a mark in the favor of saying, hey, let a guy like Oliver Marmol, who is sharp, understands the landscape of the game at the current time, knows how to get more out of players than it seems like their talent should indicate, or even their statistics should indicate. The Cardinals are 20th in ERA right now, but sitting around 500, like they're still in the mix. And you've had times where the offense has absolutely cratered, mm-hmm. and his ability and the hitting coaching staff's ability to try and get more out of those guys and let those times where, right now it feels like the sky is falling because you traded all your relievers and we're not really even trying to win anymore. What is this? He's got to be the therapist in the clubhouse as well to be able to keep things on the trail, and we'll see if he's able to do that. But yeah, I think it's just an interesting when we find a mark against a manager like an Ollie Marmol who's young, pretty early in the game. We go, well, Bruce Bochy and Terry Francona are doing this. They'll get the HOF by their name before too long as well once they retire. And it's just not everybody is those guys. And the ones that become those guys had the opportunity over decades to become those guys doing what they're doing right now.
Yep. Walt Mosby, there are different minds making decisions now. 100% right there.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the lineup decisions are based on who and what they want to see. Newt in right field, not Walker, and Gorman playing time reduced. Yeah, I think you're right about that. Everybody in the organization denies that's the case, but I think you're right about that. And Eric Cleveland, to think the Cardinals could have had Tito and chose Matheny might be the worst decision in club history. Might have cost the franchise a World Series. Here's the thing. And Tito basically knew this when he walked in to interview with the Cardinals. And then when he walked out of the interview in Cincinnati, he knew he wasn't going to get the job. But John Mozeliak had been the general manager since 08, 9, 10, 11, for 4 years. And essentially, even as the general manager, his boss was Tony La Russa. He didn't want that anymore. He didn't want his manager to be his boss anymore, which Tito Francona would have done. Why? Well, because a rising tide lifts all boats and you want to win. That's why you hire Tito. But he wanted to be the boss. Bo wanted to be the boss. And that's how Matheny and why Matheny got the job over Tito Francona. And I'll tell you this, if you, again, go back to the all-time Cardinal managerial leaders, and there you see Mike Matheny's winning percentage just ahead of Whitey Herzog and Tony La Russa.
Yeah, that is, it's crazy to think back to the middle of 2018 when it was like, oh, they're hovering around 500. Yeah. Gotta can the manager. Yeah. I mean, that was, but again,
into a World Series, by the way, and managed another team to 500 wins.
That was
for 100 wins in 2015.
100%. But that was like the period of time where you hadn't yet had this malaise of player development, and the Cardinals hadn't yet, slashed their resources devoted to infrastructure. And so, like, from an ownership perspective, yeah, it was weird. Why are we only around 500? Never even fell below 500. I don't believe under Matheny. And so that, they needed to make a change. Now, I believe that to have been the correct change at the time, personally, having covered the team. But it is kind of interesting to think back to then and then forward to now, in the way that, like when Cardinals fans say there's been a decline, it's been a steady, decline in expectations and in the standard. That's unavoidable at this point. It's not even an argument or a debate. It just is what it is. The other point about Francona, though, he was dealing with some personal things at the time where he was not going to get the job. That's another thing that was absolutely a fact.
Well, and
at the time,
let's make one other point here, and we'll never know what we may never know what the philosophical differences were. But I do believe that Mike Shildt is a difference-making manager.
I think he is. I think both Oliver Marmol and Mike Shildt are really good managers.
Yeah.
You kind of have to pick one side or the other because one guy took the other guy's job, and so that's the narrative. But I actually think they're both really sharp. Yeah.
I think so too. The thing about Shildt is he had such vast experience, and Ollie, I think, is still the youngest manager in Major League Baseball. He didn't have the wealth of teaching and handling people experience that Shildt had. And we go to another, and we do appreciate your chats and you being a part of the show. It'll all come down to what Chaim Bloom thinks about Ollie Marmol. Say what you want about Ollie, but he has become better. Considering the circumstances under which he was hired, considering the current situation, Ollie Marmol has done a good job. If Chaim Bloom decides to part ways with him, Ollie Marmol will not be unemployed long. That's from Philip Mezapel. Thank you so much. And that is, you hit the nail right on the head. Ultimately, it does come down to what Chaim Bloom thinks. And I don't know what Chaim Bloom thought about his situation in Boston, but I know that there were people that believed that he felt like with Alex Cora there, and it was kind of different because Alex Cora had won a World Series, but he didn't have his guy. He didn't have his guy, and he and Cora kind of butted heads. But the difference was Chaim has had 2 years in the Cardinal organization to get to know Ollie Marmol. I'm sure that Chaim Bloom knows right now whether or not Ollie Marmol is going to be his manager in 2016.
It's actually a good point. I think that's a really good point that we're like, well, he's got to have this runway the rest of the year, and we'll see. Like, winning 5 more games than losing 5 more games the rest of the year is not necessarily going to be the indicator for Chaim. I would like to think they've had those not those conversations, but had conversations to where Chaim Bloom has a good understanding for what Oliver Marmol is all about. And it feels like they would be two gentlemen that would be on the same side of, the way that they want to approach things. But it's just one of those big unknowns that until we get to the point where decisions begin to happen and Chaim begins to take over, we're just left here to speculate and guess as to what might be his priorities at that point in time.
Mike Gray, I like Ollie. Cardinals' problem isn't strategy or usage; it's personnel.
Yep. Get better players. Yeah. I mean, it's just
pretty simple.
It is what it is. And again, if we're going to credit and say, hey, he's done more with less than we expected him to do, that's not an indicator that there's a manager problem. You just have to look at it and say, okay, what is it that we're not doing well? Pitching consistently. Okay, not enough swing and miss. Get players that do that. Mm-hmm. He's been preaching get players that do that for 2-3 years, but you can't. He's said this. You can't just turn a guy like Miles Michaelis into swing and miss. Like you could, there's a limit to what you can do. You can try to take it from 60% to 80%, but you can't just turn and say, hey, be a swing and miss. You're going to strike out, you're going to strike out 10 per 9 innings. It's just not the way it works. You got to get guys.
I like this one. LBT Titan. With the exception of base running, the Cardinals have improved their fundamental play under Ollie the last 2 seasons. Managers control the fundamental play of the team, not the talent level. Do you think that the New York Yankee fans would like their team to be playing fundamentals the way the Cardinals are?
I think it's, I mean, I think there's some validity to this.
Yeah, I think I think there are 2 bailiwicks to a manager's job. And Whitey Herzog only had 2 rules. Because once spring training was over, he said, show up on time and hustle, play hard. But he spent spring training and he spent a good part of the season, and they did do infield back then, but they worked on fundamentals all the time. And I do think that a really good manager controls fundamentals. There's a reason that when Bochy got to Texas, they turned into a much better defensive team. And there's a reason that when Tony La Russa came here in 1996, well, they did a lot of turnover of the roster, but they became a much better defensive team. Managers move around, and when we say managers don't matter, the good managers that move around, the fundamentals generally get better. That happened with Torre. When Torre got to the Yankees, that young team with Jeter, Posada, Williams, that group we just talked about a few minutes ago, they got better fundamentally because of Joe Torre, because he learned at the teaching of George Kissel. And so there is a lot to be said for a manager implementing fundamentals. And I do think that Ollie has done a really good job of that. And I don't think that he was very accountable a couple of years ago when they won 71 games and their defense was terrible. And I had, we kind of had it out. And he said, hey, who was the manager last year when we won 93 games? And I said, you. And he said, was the defense great last year? And I said, yeah, but it deteriorated. But Ollie and I are good now. But anyway, I think he has done a good job of focusing from the first day of spring training on fundamentals. And here's the one thing that he has learned, and managers and coaches have to learn this. Just because you were good at the end of one season doesn't mean you're going to be good at the beginning of the next. So, and you've been to enough spring trainings, you see this. The best coaches and managers take it down to ground zero as if they're teaching a 5-year-old how to play from a fundamental standpoint.
Yeah, and like those are the springs that you feel like can last and can be something that sustains through 6 months to follow when you do it that way. And look, every time you go to spring, everybody's in the best shape of their lives, but there are differences and nuances that I certainly think can make a difference. I'm still going to go back to personnel, though. I'm still going to go back to players. And this group isn't a bad group, and that's why I say it doesn't need to be a multi-year rebuild process, but there needs to be some targeted changes to get it up and running to a level that can compete with the Dodgers and the Padres and the Mets. And some teams are spending far more than the Cardinals. It's not all about payroll, but like that's a fact of life as well. I don't think they're far off. It's just my frustrations with this team when I think about why they're going to fall short this year. The manager's not even on the list. There's a lot of other stuff that is on the list that he has nothing to do with.
Get yourself a number 1 starter. By the way, if I were in the process of hiring a new president of baseball operations or general manager, and he said, yeah, we're going to put together a 5-year plan, I wouldn't give him the job, because there's no such thing as a 5-year plan.
Doesn't need to be
in baseball anymore. No. The 2012 Royals won 72 games. They went to 86 the next year. The next year they were in the World Series. The Diamondbacks won 52 games 2 years before they were in the World Series. The quick turnaround is a thing now. Atlanta, before they won the World Series in 2021, they went from 72 wins to 90 wins, and then they climbed the ladder and wound up winning. But it didn't take 5 years. It took 3 years for them to get there. It just doesn't take long. How many times did the Red Sox go from last place to the World Series?
Seemed like the Giants every other year were doing it for a while there.
It doesn't take a long time to win again. It doesn't take 5 years. You can do it in 2.
And they don't have a roster, like a core of their roster that's completely useless. They have a lot of like capable on the offensive side, certainly some capable players. Yeah, they probably got to add a star, maybe 2, or add one, develop one guy that's currently in that like mid-range and he becomes a star and that helps your case. The pitching side of it, though, is fairly obvious that when Miles Michaelis is back into the rotation kind of guy. Fedde was that. Palante is currently that. And that's 60% of your rotation for the bulk of this season. Michael McGreevy, when they drafted him, it was like, he's never really going to strike out a bunch of guys. That's still going to be the case. And so he's going to be a mid to back into the rotation guy as well. You got to find those frontline starters and a couple stars. And I think everything else sort of falls into place, but they have been stuck with some of the acquisitions and maybe the lesser contracts, the bad contracts that have been on the books that are, that's going to clear up, and there's going to be an opportunity, a slate for the next guy to make some things happen if ownership is going to give the support as well that's going to be necessary to spend whenever that may come.
And luck is going to play a role here.
Sure.
If we have a 2027 season, in an ideal scenario, you would go 1 through 5. You'd have a couple of strikeout guys. You would have Quinn Matthews and you would have Liam Doyle at the top of your rotation. Then you have a Palante, a McGreevy, a Leahy, those guys as your 3rd through 5th. But to your point, you need to have swing and miss at the front of your rotation. And the Cardinals are not, I don't think, ever going to spend $43 million on a starting pitcher to find that guy. So that's what you have to do, is develop your own guys. And the 2 guys right now in the organization that I see that have the chance to be those guys, and there might be more, I'm just thinking of the ones that I know are Matthews and Doyle. Yeah,
I think those are the 2 names that I would identify as well. And then, let's say, because you've had so many setbacks with guys that have gotten injured and things that have happened where, Tekoa Roby's not on that path. Tink Hence is not on that path. The guys that we thought were close are clearly not. And so you have to figure that out. But let's say with these 2, Doyle and Matthews, that it does work out, and that by 2027, they're playing baseball still. And those are 2 guys that are going to be able to be in your rotation and be what we're hoping for them to be. Okay, at that point, you're not going to sign somebody, but you can trade for one, a guy who's under some team control. You can spend, because guess what? You've been beefing up your development system and you have prospects that are going to be good for somebody, but they're going to be good for somebody else because you need to trade for that number 3 who's actually more like a number 1, and you've got 3 of them, and now you're cooking. That's they don't even have the system to be able to do that at this point.
And I wish I knew whether or not, because I really don't, whether or not Dusty Blake had the ability to be that guy. Like the Cardinals back in the early 80s, when they won the World Series under Whitey, had a pitching coach named Hub Kittle. They got Joaquin Andujar the day before the strike in 1981. He didn't pitch for them until after the strike, but he was, for lack of a better term, Joaquin was kind of a knucklehead, but loaded with talent. And Whitey and Hub Kittle got the most out of him. He was the number 1 starter for a world championship team. John Tudor is just a guy with Boston and Pittsburgh. And they think, he's just a guy. Cardinals have another great pitching coach in Mike Rourke, who sees something in Tudor. Cardinals trade for him, turns into a number 1. Move forward to when Tony got here. The Cardinals don't have a number 1, but they go out, and in one day or 1 week, I guess, they signed Hentgen, Andy Bennis, and they signed Todd Stottlemyre. They got 3 for 1996. But the big one was when they recognized a guy like Darryl Kyle, who'd been a 20-game winner with Houston, went to Colorado and sucked. But they traded for Darryl Kyle. He turns into a number 1. They recognize Chris Carpenter. They sign him. He turns into a number 1. And all of those guys came from other places and turned into number 1s for the Cardinals. And they need to get lucky, and they need to coach a guy up there. Like you're saying, find a 3 somewhere else or an injured guy somewhere else that you turn into a number 1.
And that's part of the reason I was wanting to see more movement at this past trade deadline, where Nootbaar gets traded for an arm that has some team control. And we're like, I don't know if that guy's good. But then they have the people in place that said, yeah, he is. That's why we traded for him. Like, it was maybe wishful thinking, but that would have been something that I think I could have gotten behind, and you get energized by that. I'm not saying Nootbaar had to be the guy that goes, but you had so many guys in a bucket that it felt like you can go get your Reed Detmers or your Taj Bradley, and it's like, okay, those guys didn't get moved. So maybe the teams that have them aren't moving them. Totally understand that. But that's like, we can make excuses till we're blue in the face about, why they didn't end up getting the guys that can turn into something or weren't able to identify them. But that's the job. Like, finding out. The problem is the guy who's doing the job right now isn't going to be the guy that's doing the job in 2 months. And so I bought in a little bit too much to the idea that, no, it doesn't really have to be a lame duck season. They can have organizational synergy. They can do some things, and I was wrong. They did not do enough at the deadline with the situation that they had, in my opinion. And now it's going to be all on Chaim Bloom's plate in November, where once again, we'll probably be going, well, it's really hard to do 8 different things in the offseason, but that's what the last guy is going to leave him with. They're going to have to do a bunch of stuff to this 40-man roster in order to get it turned around quickly. It can be done, but it's a lot to ask.
Well, let's enjoy the last 7 or 8 weeks of Miles Mikolas. And tonight, he's going for the Cardinals against the Dodgers. And I'll tell you what, you've got something, because I'm going to tell you what's up at DraftKings Pick.
What do they got?
DraftKings Pick 6.
Okay.
It's going to happen tonight. I know that you might not believe this. Shape, you might not believe this, viewer, but here's the thing. Miles Mikolas is going to have more than 4.5 strikeouts against the Doyers tonight. You got Mookie Betts scuffling there. He'll probably get Shohei once, but then the bottom of that lineup leaves something to be desired. So Mikolas, more than 4.5 strikeouts tonight as the Cardinals take on LA. So you got that going for you, which is nice, right? And then you add to that Pick 6, and you've got maybe the second best hitting catcher in the baseball in Alejandro Kirk. He's taking on Colorado tonight. They're at Colorado. Toronto is at Colorado, where what do? You hit. And Alejandro Kirk is at 2.5 for hits plus runs plus RBIs. I think he's going over that. So I'm going to go with Alejandro Kirk to go over 2.5 hits plus runs plus RBIs. I'm going to go with Miles Mikolas to go over 4.5 strikeouts. And that's how easy it is. Just pick more or less on the stats for 2 or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. Pick 6 available right here in Missouri. You don't want to miss out on the fun, and don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6, and right now, if you're a new customer, get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to get $25 in bonus picks with your first deposit of $5. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, Shape, I got to ask you something here.
Okay.
Because it's on our little thing there.
So you have to do it.
Yeah, so I've got to ask you, what's up with Nolan Arenado? Where do you stand on Nolan Arenado's future as a Cardinal?
Not optimistic that such a future exists. I don't know about the extent of his current injury, but I can bet you if he had been traded on July 31st, he wouldn't be on the injured list. I feel pretty good about that. Yep. So, I mean, the timing of it does make you wonder, okay, there's some talks that maybe he could move. Okay, not going to expand the trade list, but maybe there's a team. When nothing materializes, that's the moment that you cash in your chips and he's on the IL. All I have to go on is that, and I would say that that's not a great look as far as his future is concerned. If it's a case where truly he just gutted it out with the various injuries that he was dealing with, and then when he didn't get traded and you realize the direction of the team, it's like, it's not worth gutting out, but I'll be back in 15 days. Great. I'm somewhat skeptical. We'll see. Like, time will tell. If mid-August rolls around and he's, rehabbing and going to rejoin the team, and great. But I don't necessarily envision that. I would take the less than on that on DraftKings Pick 6. And so we'll see what ends up happening there. But then you think to the offseason of, this idea of, well, will they trade him? He's got to expand his list. He doesn't have value in a trade. And so it's not really up to him. There's a leverage if you're Nolan Arenado. And so if he would like to go somewhere and be more of a bit player on a winning team, just accept that, accept it and accept that that's what's going to happen. Otherwise, you can hang out here in St. Louis and the Cardinals can either play him or probably, it could get to like a DFA point. I would not be stunned if that happened, because you've got conflicting, converging ideologies and goals in mind. And Arenado is moving in one direction, and the Cardinals are trying to figure out who's going to be the third baseman the next time that they're contending. And it doesn't seem like it's going to be him.
Matthew, they have other fish to fry. What do you got for us?
I'd say so. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up again is because we talked about this yesterday, but our take on it was like the extent to it for us was we're not going to see him the rest of this year. And then in his video yesterday, Bernie went the next step forward and talked about the Cardinals needing to suck up and eat the money and just get him off the roster and finally just move on to the next run. And so with B-Schaeff in the studio today, I kind of wanted to see if because I think we all agree that that's the smart thing to do. It would make the most sense. 27 other clubs in baseball probably handle it that way. So my question to you two is, do you think we see that drastic of a move in the next 5 months from the Cardinals?
Yeah, I could see it. There's no good reason to do it now. But especially if you think that JJ Wetherholt needs a ton of at-bats and he's going to play the infield, they aren't moving him to the outfield, then why not move on? If you anticipate that Wetherholt's going to be here, regardless of what you think Gorman is going to be, Wetherholt's either going to be a part-time player or a full-time player, one or the other, he's going to be here. So, yeah, I would think that would be something to look at. But the other thing you have to look at, B-Schaeff, this guy might have a chronic shoulder deal because his OPS plus is identical to what it was when he was awful in Colorado in 2020. And I think you have to find out whether or not he can pass a physical before you send him off and give him all that money.
Yeah, so like maybe you could recoup some of it on insurance or something like that. Yeah, I mean there could be some legitimacy to that. I don't believe he'll play for the Cardinals in 2026. I'd be surprised if he plays again for the Cardinals at all. Is my stance. Just because I feel like again they're moving in opposite directions, and Chaim Bloom was not tied to that. And so when it comes for Chaim Bloom to come in, and you're seeing a third baseman who does play really good defense, but is a number 8 hitter in your lineup with the way that he performs right now, and there's no real reason to believe that the power is going to suddenly come back unless there's an injury that suddenly is healed, which if it's chronic, by definition, probably not going to happen. So it just feels like one of those things that you're going to cut your losses if there's not value there from a trade standpoint. Like, I feel like in the offseason, if the Cardinals could eat a significant amount of money, they should be able to move him. But like, that's what you explore before you say, oh, DFA, because nobody's claiming him on his full contract right now. No. So I don't think that would make sense to do. So I think, yeah, you in the offseason, there's going to be a trade and that's why I always kind of was like this idea that if he made it through the deadline, he would stay a Cardinal. I'm like, I don't know performance wise what the 2026 team is going to view. And that was really before Wetherholt continued to guys just knocking on the door down there at AAA. And so you have to make consideration for him in 2026. All that converges to me to go, I'm skeptical that we see him again, but it would be an unfortunate way for it to end, but all good things have to come to an end.
Yeah. And Mason Windu points out that Arenado's K percentage is one of the best in the league. His power is the issue. If he gets healthy, he will hit okay again. I think one of the reasons that he has the better K rate, the better K percentage, is because he can't swing hard anymore. I think my sense is that the shoulder was bothering him so much that all he could do was try to get his bat on the ball and hope.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, he's always been a pretty good contact guy without a ton of huge strikeout numbers, but you're right. It's even like markedly better now than it was even in his prime years, which is kind of an interesting. Yeah, there might be something there, but then supposedly his bat speed had been higher earlier in the season. I don't really know if that has maintained throughout the course of the season, but that was also something that was a talking point. I don't know. And you'd also think like, how much of it with him personally is just like, man, I should have taken that trade to Houston because he bungled it. I mean, we said at the time, we don't know what this Cardinals team is going to look like in terms of adding and being at the upper echelon. And Houston, yeah, sure, they traded one guy away, but organizationally, their front office had been in a better place to where like they lose Kyle Tucker and they're still right there in the mix like they always are.
Good starting pitchers, right? They still had decent bullpen. There were a lot of things going for them. Altuve wanted him there. They still had Pena, who's been a World Series MVP. They had a lot of really interesting parts. Plus, they had the Crawford boxes.
That was the main thing I was going to say. Like, he hates what happens at Busch Stadium when you hit a ball to the warning track and it doesn't go over. Like, he doesn't like that. It's crazy to me that he didn't take that trade. I don't know what circumstances, again, and that's a personal topic because he said, hey, I'm not going to move my family for something that's not the right thing. But like, there's not really projecting to be a long-term future here either.
He doesn't appear to be very decisive. And I don't know the guy. I don't know him at all. But it took him a long time to get here. Remember how the process, we were hearing in 2020, like in January of 2020, this is well before the pandemic started.
Right.
The Cardinals were after him and wanted him. They didn't get him until 2021.
Yeah. Were they like fully ready though to take on all the money and stuff at the time, or was
the Cardinals were
okay,
but at that time they were reluctant, and I think that he really hadn't made up his mind yet because he had just signed the contract.
Just signed, maybe didn't want to leave,
right?
Yeah,
but then even most recently, when he told John Denton after the Helsley trade, "I've got things to think about." Well,
what do you know what that means?
Yeah. He's a thoughtful guy, but he obviously, I'm with you, unless he just really loves St. Louis, which would be great, but he should have taken the Houston.
I just
from
think
a winning and success standpoint, he should have taken the Houston.
I think if he gave him the truth serum now, he probably thinks he should have taken the Houston deal. I can't speak to what he should have done because that's a personal decision, but I would not be surprised if he's looking back at that. And like, that's a tough way to live too, because like it's in the past, you can't do anything about it now. And he's a very intense guy that puts everything that he can into being great. And so if any part of your mind is lingering on something like that, which again, I can't say that it is, we're just sitting here on the sideline going, man, that's an interesting dynamic. Where things were in the middle of February to what could have been. And now you're here going, I've got things to think about with a Cardinals team that just sold half its bullpen and is not really going anywhere in the current season. And I'm still in that home ballpark that I cannot, my power's sapped and I can't maximize it because I play half my games at Busch. That is a tough combo.
Yeah, Steve Wright, they need to do the physical now. Maybe he needs surgery and can recover before next year. He's 1 year older than Contreras and his drop off is huge compared to Contreras. And yeah, you have to believe, well, there is an injury there. It's at the very least an inflamed shoulder. That's why he's on the IL. But could it be worse than that? Do they need to do some imaging? Perhaps. Samuel Howe, well, it's not like we're going to replace him with a better glove. We'll need to see a drop-off and get mad about it.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yes. No, he's right. People will get mad about it because they're already getting mad about Gorman, a throw that Contreras doesn't pick. It's Contreras should have caught it. Gorman should have. I said this all off season that we assumed Arenado wouldn't be on the team. And so I said, get ready because the defense is, you're going to get mad about it, but you just have to accept it and live with it. And it's not a perfect scenario. But maybe JJ ends up being a guy that he sticks at third and can pick it over there. That's the hope, right?
That's why I said I don't know, because I think Wetherholt has a chance.
Yeah.
They really like wherever Wetherholt plays. The Cardinals like his defense. Bernie, in his video yesterday, suggested that the Cardinals could reestablish their attendance numbers somewhat, not fully, by calling up Wetherholt now. I don't think that's the case.
No. That's a bad idea.
Yeah.
All due respect.
Yeah, no doubt. It is, that's what bad organizations do. Is they call up players that have played 17 games in AAA to try to enhance your attendance numbers. Oh, they want to come and watch him. No, and the juice won't be worth the squeeze. I am convinced that Cardinal fans are checked out this year. They aren't coming back, whether JJ Wetherholt is playing third base for a couple of months or not.
I think that's largely right, unless there's a random 8-game winning streak and suddenly you're tied again for a wild card spot. Then it's like, hey, every day is like, can they keep the streak going? That's kind of what happened in, what was it, 2022, 21, whatever.
Even then,
21.
When they went on the 17-game winning streak, crowds were not great at Busch.
No, that's fair. That's accurate. Yeah, no, that's fair. I don't think JJ. A couple things. I don't think bringing up JJ on August 9th or whatever day it is, Friday that they come home, is and say we're going to get attendance back is probably the great way to approach that. Secondarily, and really this is the primary, you cannot bring up JJ Wetherholt. You have to gain the service time. You cannot bring him up and elapse his rookie eligibility for next season. It's 45 days. You get to mid to late August and there's less than 45 days remaining in the season and you have a spot to play him every day. I'm not really going to care either way. I'm going to say that's fine. You bring him up. But right now we're talking about Sajaci and Gorman at third base. And and again, to your point, you don't want to rush a guy based on a couple dozen games.
And if you do bring him up, you are pretty much telling everybody, okay, there's our guy. There's our centerpiece now
for next year too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's starting next year if you do that.
It's to me, if you're the Cardinals and you bring up Wetherholt, what you're saying is, okay, we don't have a star. This is our guy, because you don't have any other stars. You got a guy that should have been the first pick in the draft that has torn up the minor leagues, and you're placing him in the middle of a team that is kind of, well, you sold off. So you're going to be hovering around 500. You're going to be languishing, and add him to that mix.
In fairness, if he's ready, I'll still do that after the 45-day thing. You cannot set it up to where if you think he's this good, he's got to be eligible for Rookie of the Year next year, because that's a draft pick if he wins the award. And so that's why it's 130 at bats, 45 days. He's got to be below both thresholds. And so August 5th, it's not remotely a conversation. August 25th, absolutely, if you believe he's ready, they're the executives, they're the people running the organization. They'll know better if he's ready than I'll know if he's ready. But I don't mind the aspect of, the pressure of being in a losing situation, because it's identical to what they did with Mason Wynn in 2023 when they actually sucked. They don't suck this year, and Mason Wynn had to come up, and I think even though it sucked and he hit 170, I think it helped him for knowing that he was going to be the everyday shortstop the next year, and he had that little bit of big league time under his belt. I'm cool with them doing that with Wetherholt if they believe it's appropriate. I'll trust the judgment. That's fine.
And one of the things that was brought to my attention about Matthews, the Cardinal regime now, the term that was used, they like to see a guy bleed a little bit, face some adversity at the minor league level, which Wetherholt never has. You remember very well the video with Ollie and Jordan Walker, where he said, hey, one of the reasons you're going to make this team is because of the way you handle adversity. Well, he hadn't faced adversity yet, but then once he did, the Cardinals sent him down. I think that they would probably like to see Wetherholt face a little bit of adversity before he makes it to the major leagues.
Be awesome, I guess. But what if he just doesn't because he's that good? That's like the kind of, off color answer of if he's just that good, he never will. But you're right. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with having him stay in AAA the rest of the year. I also think, you want to find some adversity, he'll come up to the big leagues and find some. Jack Caglione has found some for the Royals, but then you worry, like, is that some short-term adversity where he's on the other side of it in the future? That's kind of how it worked for Mason Wynn. Like, nobody was concerned that Mason Wynn was going to get his psyche knocked around by hitting 150 over the month of September.
This is 71 or 81 wins. It doesn't matter.
But they knew what his makeup was, and they were right. Like, it didn't phase him. He built because of it.
Right.
I don't want to count JJ Wetherholt out from being that same kind of mentality, because I think you get 5 or 6 of those guys in a lineup, you got a really good stew brewing. If you can get those types of guys with those mentalities that grind and improve, and eventually they're above average MLB players, and 5 or 6 or 7 of them. So if JJ, if they believe he can be that kind of guy too, I'm okay with him not being in those adverse conditions until he gets here.
Bottom line, though, I don't think you bring him up because your attendance is lesser than the Rockies.
Like, it's one thing to put it on JJ Wetherholt, like you said, hey, you don't have a star, so when we bring him up, that's an indicator like, you're our star, go be the star. It's another thing to say you have to fix attendance too while you're at it. Yeah. Like, you're trying to figure out Major League Baseball as a rookie. And also, hey buddy, I know you're here, but it doesn't look like we've ticked up in the ticket sales department today. I don't necessarily make that connection personally.
Eric Cleveland, would the Cardinals like to see Crooks maybe in September? I think they know what they have in Pajes and Pozo. So you get to add 2 guys. And my guess is that they would probably like to add at least 1 pitcher, maybe 2. You probably the lefty that they just picked up yesterday might wind up being one.
Veneziano. I finally figured out how to find his name.
So you probably add the left-hander to the bullpen. You only bring up Jimmy Crooks, I think, if you're going to play him, because I think that reps are good for a guy like Jimmy Crooks. So and as we talked about at the beginning of the show, Pozo is a great pinch hitter. So if they are inclined to sit Pajes and just observe what they have in Jimmy Crooks, I don't think it'd be awful to get Crooks up here and let this group at the major league level see what they have. Now, again, we said earlier, doesn't make any difference if Ollie Marmol and his staff see a guy for a month and then they aren't here next year.
Yeah, the group is such an interesting word. It's the word we normally use, but now we have to sit back and think, what do we mean when we say group? Who's actually watching? I think back to last September, and it was something that at the time I was okay with the way that it went because I didn't think Victor Scott II was ready. And I still probably think he wasn't ready. Then he had a really good offseason, and he's come in and he's more capable this year. He's still not hitting a ton, but he's been capable. But Michael Ciani played like every game in center field in September at the end of last season, and it was like, what was being gained from that when you knew you weren't making the playoffs? And like people didn't like that. I think again, it's maybe a conversation of if a guy is ready. And so if Jimmy Crooks is ready, then it serves to maybe benefit you to go ahead and do that. And like if you already knew what you had in Michael Ciani, because I feel like we kind of did. You already know what you have in Pedro Pages as well. I don't say that as a pejorative. I think you know what you have in him and that he's a guy that can be around and can catch half your games and be a good defensive stalwart, but is not going to hit a ton. But if you're trying to maybe reach for more and you think Crooks is ready, I don't have a big issue with doing that, but it feels like the Cardinals might. Well, like at the catcher position, they might not think they might want to see for a spring training when he thinks he's got a chance, what it looks like and how he carries himself and how he approaches it. And like, are you throwing him to the wolves when it comes to managing the game, calling the game for these pitchers when, there's not like a lot on the line for those pitchers necessarily at this point in the season, but those are all considerations that I know the Cardinals care about.
And I think we also have to keep in mind that you only increase the roster now by 2. So
true.
If you're going to call up Crooks, you probably aren't going to call up Wetherholt. If you're going to call up Wetherholt, you probably aren't, unless you're going to make a roster.
Yeah, well, they'll probably, that's my thought is like, if you're calling up Wetherholt, like, does JC even need to be here at that point? Like, he could be optioned.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's OPSing 590, getting playing time over Gorman. Again, there's probably a reason for it. I don't happen to know it at this point in time. But if Wetherholt's here, he's playing third base every day. And so, like, Gorman's on the IL or JC's in AAA. I think you could probably still maneuver that. But you're right. Like, it's not unlimited the way that it used to be when it comes to September call-ups.
You had completely full locker rooms. Cole Bassett's left foot. Okay. I know this is talked about a lot. Despite being the worst team in baseball this year, the Rockies drawing bigger crowds than the Cardinals. That's a wild twist, especially considering Busch Stadium's usual reputation for fan loyalty. Number one, the Cardinals are they're mediocre. They're the quintessentially, they're 57-57, quintessentially mediocre team. Okay, number one, Colorado, Coors Field, great place to go. They've made it an event. They've made it a destination. The Seattle Mariners just traded for Josh Naylor and Eugenio Suarez. They've been in the race most of the year. The Colorado Rockies are drawing more than the Seattle Mariners. For much of this season, the Detroit Tigers had the best record in baseball. The Colorado Rockies are drawing more than the Detroit Tigers. The Kansas City Royals were in the playoffs last year. The Colorado Rockies are drawing 29,867 a game. Kansas City Royals are drawing 22,157 a game, 8,000 less a game than Colorado. Tampa Bay has not had a good year, and Tampa Bay doesn't have a huge stadium to play in this year, but they're still not drawing even 10,000 a game. It's not like there aren't other teams that the Colorado Rockies are close to or outdrawing. The Rangers spent a ton of money, right? They've got Jacob deGrom, they've got Seager, they've got Semien. They're in the hunt. The Rangers are drawing 29.9. The Rockies are drawing 29.8.
And a pretty new stadium there, by the way, too, in Arlington.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another factor that should benefit you when it comes to attendance.
Yeah, so it's not like the Cardinals are the only team that's drawing less than Colorado. And congratulations to Colorado fans for getting out. Maybe they want to. Maybe they like train wrecks. I don't know.
No, I don't think they do. I think they like.
But
I think they like Denver. I think they like Denver's a really cool place, and that is a cool, backdrop, and that you want to be there. I would be spending my days there if I lived in Denver. That is just a fact of the matter. If they were 59 or if they were 55 and 58 like the Angels, 3 games under 500 and not just this historic train wreck, we wouldn't be talking about it because everybody would go, they're mediocre, but they have a really great backdrop at their ballpark. They still have a really great backdrop, and I guess, you get to see the other visiting players come in.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's still cool.
Yeah. But a 500 team in a market this size, we're Pittsburgh, we're Cincinnati, we're Cleveland. And by the way, the Cardinals drawing 28-8 announced, Cleveland drawing 25. We're St. Louis is essentially every other mid-market franchise, unless they're winning. And when you win, then you draw more. But when you don't win, when you're 500 and people are disenchanted because of the Pozo or because of the manager, that's what you're going to draw. And it is what it is. And Dave, I don't know if you agree with me, but if JJ Wetherholt is here next year and the Cardinals do the exact same thing from a one-loss perspective and Ollie Marmol is still the manager, I think they draw exactly the same.
Unless he is like locked in rookie of the year.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way that like he would be a draw by himself, which is a lot to ask of a 23-year-old player, whatever he is. So like, I'm not saying that that's the way that this has to go, but you're right. Like, I don't think it's going to be tangibly different because I don't expect a huge movement, ground shaking offseason in terms of bringing in big name guys.
And from talking to front office people with the Cardinals, they couch it perfectly. They get it. They say it took us several years to have this happen with this fan base, to have this attendance drop off.
Yeah.
And the process of, and it is a process, coming back, bringing the attendance back is not going to be an event. It's going to be a process. And what was couched, the way it was couched to me, and I think it's perfect, we have to earn back their trust because fans feel like that there was something nefarious that happened that doesn't cause them to buy tickets anymore. And so the Cardinals know that. They know that they have to earn back the fans' trust, and it's not going to be one guy. It's probably not even going to be 1 year. When the Cardinals became Cardinal Nation, like I was at Willie McGee's first game in 1982. Granted, they were coming off a strike, but had the best record in the division. It was Whitey ball. Willie McGee's very first game in May of 1982, they draw 14,000. They won the World Series, won the World Series in 82, went to the World Series in 85, didn't draw 3 million until 1987. So that's really when Cardinal Nation kicked in. It wasn't the 1960s or 70s. It was 1987 when they drew 3 million for the first time. And it took a while to get there, right? They've done a lot of winning. And I think that'll have to be the case now. I think they'll have to do a lot of winning over the course of time to get back to drawing 3 million again.
I think it's interesting that you say that, though. Like, I think Cardinals fans would be glad to hear you say that, hey, within the organization, this is kind of the way that they are approaching this behind closed doors. Finding a way to approach it that way in front of the open doors, I think would be beneficial as well, but they have not. I think you're going to see a change. I think with the messaging, you're going to see a change. And I've defended Mo at times when it comes to the complaints that people give about the messaging, because I don't know. I feel like there have been times where people complain and I go, it's actually not that confusing. Here's what they're doing. But there's also times clearly where there's been a disconnect. And I think they are almost behind closed doors giddy, not to kick Mo on the way out, but to be like, we're going to have an opportunity to kind of make this next iteration of the Cardinals how we want it to go. And I think they have an internal trust that fans are going to see that. Maybe I am giving too much credit once again, in buying into it hook, line, and sinker. But there's a part of me that believes like a year from now, I don't know if the Cardinals are going to have a different record on August 5th, 2026 than they have today. Might be a 500 team, but I think there will be a different feeling about the Cardinals.
I agree with you.
A year from now.
And here's the thing. There's clearly Mo fatigue. Mo admitted in an interview.
Mo's got Mo fatigue. Yeah. I mean, everybody's got it.
He said, I know the city is tired of me. He said that on the record with Frank Cusimano. So that's one part of this. The other part of it is, and I guess the best analogy I can make is when Charlie Spoonhour was the head coach at St. Louis University, he actually registered the name Spoonball. Well, let me give you two examples here. And so people came out to watch Spoonball. They came out to watch the Billikens because Charlie Spoonhour was their coach. He was very popular. He had a great personality, and he built a great team. Here's another thing. When Whitey got hired as the Cardinal manager, and I don't know if Chaim Bloom or any other manager or general manager will do this, Whitey got it in his contract that for every ticket sold above $1 million, he got $1. And so when they got to 3 million, an extra $2 million in his pocket. And he knew that what he did, number one, he's from here and everybody could relate to him, but he also knew if you win, you're going to draw. And I think that Chaim Bloom can be that guy that at the top, where if he plays his cards right from a public standpoint and relates to the fans well, that can help sell some tickets. But I think, again, whether it's Ollie or somebody else, I think the manager relating to the fans and the Cardinals having a consistent message for the fans, I think it'll go a long way towards rebuilding that fan base.
I completely agree. And I think Ollie is good at those. Like when he's gone on different shows and like had an opportunity to, kind of try to relate to people, I think he does a nice job in those settings. I think it's going to feel different when Mo is not kind of overarching everything. And I'm not even trying to use overarching in like a negative connotation, but I know the way that it's received. And I know the way, like you said, it's a malaise, it's a fatigue. And there's a new group that's going to have an opportunity to put its stamp on things. And I think that they're gonna, I don't think that they're gonna just kind of go business as usual in the way that they approach what this next iteration of Cardinals baseball looks like. I think they're excited to kind of put their own stamp on it.
Mason Windu, nobody avoided going to the games when Pujols was chasing 700 because they had Mo fatigue. Most fans don't even know who he is. I would disagree with that.
I understand the first part of the commentary. Like if you've got something exciting going on, you're gonna draw. But I do think most fans do know who Mo is, and they might not know his title. I don't know if they could all call out president of baseball operations. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but I think they know who he is. He's been around long enough.
And by the way, that year, the Cardinals drew 41,000 game. So yeah, that and they were
they also made the playoffs.
Yeah,
I mean they had a winning team that year. They had a good team that year. You also kind of were looking at it as like, is it going to be the last ride for Yachty, the last ride for Waino? Yep. You had, and like maybe that covered up some warts a little bit too much for ownership to believe like we're still in a great spot because we look at all this good stuff that's happening, and then you step back and you're like, oh, it was because of those guys that was happening.
They also won 17 in a row and won the division the year before.
Yeah, for sure. And that was in the midst of, then they made a manager change between those two seasons, and so they probably felt pretty invincible at the end of 2022. Like I'm just going to be honest with like trying to identify what happened from 23 to now. I guarantee you from ownership on down, they felt invincible because that Albert stuff had happened and it was once in a lifetime. And like, yeah, we did that shit. You know what I mean? Like there's probably a little bit of that. And then they had to kind of wake up and go, okay, what's next? And they had a little bit of a hard time figuring out the what's next.
I think even within the organization, you can find people that say, yeah, there was a level of arrogance that set in.
I guarantee it. Yeah. I mean, how crazy was the Albert thing? We will never see anything like it again. And like, they brought him in, they had it going on. And so, yeah, they probably did, when they went out and said, okay, just next on our ledger, the next thing we have to do is sign a catcher. Okay, Wilson Contreras is a good catcher. We're going to bring him in from the Cubs. And, that's going to drive their fan base crazy. This is going to be so cool. And then they were like, oh man, Yachty really did a lot, didn't he? Like, even though they said for years how much Yachty did, and they wouldn't stop talking, nobody would stop talking about how great Yachty is. It's like they thought they were doing lip service. That's what that tells me. Because if they really believed it to the extent that they should have, they would have treated the Contreras thing differently at the beginning.
Yep. Aaron Dodson. To me, I'm still pissed when DeWitt 3 laughed at the fans for not showing up. That you're allowed. You're allowed to be.
That's a genuine optics thing. He bungled that. I think DeWitt 3 does a great job. He bungled that one, and I think he's since kind of said, yeah, okay, I the phrasing there, I could have done a better job, and then you'll look to do a better job moving forward.
I do think it's disingenuous, though, to think that, okay, we're going to give a business less money, and then we want them to spend more. So their revenues are going to go down, but we want them to spend more. That just, to me, that doesn't make sense. So
yeah, but to your point, they have to earn the trust back.
Yeah,
like we're not going to spend just because you're the Cardinals and you've got two birds sitting on a bat. I think that's where fans are coming from.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But logic didn't apply. When people got upset with that, what he said was, he said it makes me laugh because people say, well, we're not going to show up because we want you to spend more money. Well, he was just being logical, and it is kind of a silly argument, right? Okay, we're not going to show up and we're going to reduce your revenues, but then we're not going to show up because we want you to spend more. Well, it's a business, and businesses aren't going to dig into their own pocket, any business, to spend more on a product when their revenues are down. Other things are going to change, like the top line will come down a little bit. and you'll have less expensive players.
But that could be a strategy, is to show proof of concept, is to say we're going to pour more money in because we believe on the other end we're going to get more out of it. That's obviously a riskier strategy, and this ownership group has had a very conservative approach over the years, which totally is understandable.
Yeah, I think the only owner in baseball that's doing that now is Steve Cohen.
Yeah, and we're going to see. And the Dodgers have so many smart people that are like, don't worry, your money is making money as we're deferring money, and so we're not even really losing on all this.
Dodgers are sitting with the Guggenheim Investment Fund.
Yeah,
they're sitting on $345 billion.
Yeah, you want to change the parity and the competitive balance. You kill all that. You kill all that deferred money stuff. Yeah. Make it so they can't do that anymore. But to the point about the logical response to say, like, well, this is just what a business would have to do. I think that's accurate. And I think you can't talk that way if you're a business that, like the St. Louis Cardinals. You have to not talk logically. You have to talk PR talk so that you can not put your foot in your mouth in that way. And I think they know that.
And
now.
I was just looking at it more from a logical
100%. Like, he's right, and yet you can't say that.
Right. It's bad optics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sean of St. Losersville. Imagine an owner going out of their personal pockets a little bit to show faith in their own franchise. And George Steinbrenner may or may not have done that with the Yankees. The Yankees aren't doing that now. They aren't spending beyond their revenues. Steve Cohen, they're making a lot of money. The Mets are making a lot of money, but he might be pretty close. The late Peter Seidler did that for a year with the Padres, but now they've dramatically reduced their payroll so that their revenues are closer to what their payroll is. I can't think of another owner in sports that is spending his own coin so that he can have the best team. These guys are all businessmen. They made $1 billion for a reason, and it wasn't because they were taking money out of their own pocket to fund a business.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Steve Cohen is a different breed, and like, part of me almost, and I know you're not going to like to hear this, but part of me almost hopes the Mets do win a World Series at some point, because it's like, all right, I think it's cool that that's rewarded, that we're like, hey, I'm this rich guy and I'm a big Mets fan and I'm going to buy the Mets and then I'm going to buy all the players and then we're going to win. Like, dude, if I were a Mets fan, that would be awesome. Cool. Yeah, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah.
So like, I would like to see that rewarded, but to your point, like, there are 29 other franchises and 32 in this sport and 30 in this sport that aren't doing it that way, because it's not, for most people, a sustainable way to run a business.
So sad. 45-45 fans will show up once Mozeliak and Marmol are gone. Appreciate that. Craig Lewis, no one expects DeWitts to lose money, but let's be real. They have all the Ballpark Village money and the game revenue. For BD3 to be so tone deaf and laugh at the fans, well, number one, if people aren't going to the games, they aren't going to Ballpark Village. The Ballpark Village is not, and by the way, Cordish Company owns 50% of Ballpark Village too. But people are not just going to Ballpark Village and spending a bunch of money there when they aren't going to the game. If you've been down there, Ballpark Village is kind of a ghost town on game days. So if the Cardinals, they need to win if they're going to fill Ballpark Village and have that be a profitable venture. And the other part of it is the game revenue that you're talking about. Cardinals are down 1 million fans in 3 years. From the end of 22 to the end of 25, they'll be down 1 million fans, averaging $50 a person coming through the gates. That's $50 million that they're going to be down. So the ticket revenue that you're talking about, the fan revenue, that's dropping off too. It's not like it's there and they're making a ton of money right now. People are not just going to the games and then sitting outside in the concourses. No, those seats are empty, and the concourses are empty too.
Yeah, and they're emptier than what they announced. When you say 21,000, I get it. You sold a ticket. You didn't get that $50 from that fan that came through because they didn't buy concessions because they weren't there.
Yeah, that
they are not close to the announced attendance on most nights, and that's not just the Cardinals. That's across the board in all sports. That's just how it works. But when you hear 21,000, like, and again, I continue to say, like, they're not going to announce below 20,000. I remember a point in time when they weren't going to announce below 30,000. And I really can kind of remember a point in time where it was notable that they announced below 40, like when things were really rolling. And it was like, whoa, because those nights where it's like 40,000 and 52, you're like, okay. And then now you go, well, it's 30,000 and 129. Yeah, okay. But now it's 20,072. Like, okay, sure.
Yeah, but wait, I just counted. I literally just counted.
It took me 2 innings. No, it's not that bad, but it is. It's a lot. We all know the drill. I guess I say we all know it. A lot of y'all haven't been down there, so maybe you don't know it, but I'm not can't blame you for it. It's, they're going to, I just love the phrase. Yeah, we're going to have to re-earn the trust back. I think once Mo is ushered out and they have the opportunity to set the groundwork for what they want it to look like, that's the message they need to be preaching to fans. And I think fans would be really receptive to it if they made that more of a public message, because I had not heard that until you mentioned it. I think that's really valuable.
Last thing, and this is again from our friend Sean in St. Losersville. Thanks for chatting with us, and thanks for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. It's mind-boggling that the DeWitts fumbled the Golden Goose to begin with, and they have. There's no question about it. Insane that they ever let it get that bad. And I do think that while you are 100% right, this was a golden goose and they let it get away from him, I think there were multiple extenuating circumstances that have occurred. Number one, you've talked about how risk averse they are. They are not getting into that 10-year contract market. They just won't, because of the way the back ends of those primarily work out. So the personnel is a big part of it. Having, and this is a big thing, giving Mo a certain amount of money to spend on the organization that essentially forced him to decide, okay, do I want to build a major league product or do I want to have a minor league product? Took the money, gave it to the major league product, let the minor league product, for lack of a better term, die. They had no coaches, not no coaches, but very few coaches. Never replaced people like Schilt, Pop Warner, Stubby Clapp, Ollie Marmol, the pitching the old pitching coach for Houston and Arizona. I forgot his name. And then Mike Dijon, who was their minor league field coordinator. He retired when Schilt got fired because they were best friends. So, and they never replaced those with effective people.
Right. Yeah.
So that part of it hurt. Then you have a pandemic and people got out of the habit of going to games. And then you have downtown basically disintegrate and people get afraid of downtown. There were a million extenuating circumstances that caused this problem that we see right now.
Yeah, and it's not like, it's good to point out that it's not just one thing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of different things, and it will take, I think, either time and be part of that process to recover, or something crazy happens where you get lucky again, and JJ Wetherholt is NL MVP next year and also Rookie of the Year, and you go, hey, we're back in the playoffs because of a couple of things broke our direction. But more than anything, I think the more likely way back is a process that the next group has to come in and acknowledge.
Yeah. Great job, sir.
You too. Good
fun. Always good to have Brenden Schaeffer with us on the Randy Karraker Show. Great job, as always, by the one, the only Matthew Rocchio, who will be sitting in that chair again tomorrow. Wilson helping us get on the air, too. Don't forget, STL Sports Central brought to you by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. Cards and Doyers tonight. We've got STL Sports Central 365 before and after the Cardinal game, so you'll be able to tune in. And if you get fired up about a Cardinal win, just tune in right here, and we will have post-game coverage for you. For all of us, thanks for being a part of the show, and we will see you tomorrow morning at 10:02 or 4.